Everybody works on a commission. My secretary, the president of our company, the president of the United States, the truck driver, or anybody works on a commission, even if they have a salary. They're on a commission because the salary is dependent upon productivity. And if they do not produce, then it's just a question of time before the job itself is gone. And ladies and gentlemen, that's a fact why you can even get to be the president of the United States. And if you don't produce like you ought to, they'll get you. George Washington, probably one of the greatest salesmen who ever lived. And I want to tell you what his sales job was. He literally had to sell the farmers and the merchants and the backwoodsmen and the seamen on leaving what they were doing, coming and joining the army or the navy, going to war against the most powerful nation on the face of this earth, the biggest navy and the strongest army, and he had to set them along the idea, let's go fight those people. But let me tell you, in advance now, if we win, I'm not going to be able to pay you. And if we lose, they're going to string you to the highest tree. Zig Ziglar was one of the world's most popular motivational speakers. Ziglar was one of 12 children raised by a widowed mother during the Great Depression. He wrote over 25 books, including See You at the Top, and inspired millions of people around the world. In this exclusive training, Ziglar shares with us simple but effective strategies that will help you close more sales, serve your customers better, and make more money. Special thanks to the Ziglar family for partnering with us to release his exclusive content on our YouTube channel. Enjoy my goodness. Thank you very much. Wow, I just know that folks who are attending the seminar with a film presentation are also just as excited as you are. I'm absolutely convinced that America is the greatest land on the face of this earth because of the profession of selling, and because we are a land of salespeople. Nobody could claim we're the greatest because of our size, because China and Russia and Brazil and Canada are bigger than we are. Nobody can say it's because of our population, because China and India and Russia all have a lot more people than we have. They can't even say it's because of our natural resources, although we have certainly been more than abundantly blessed in this area. But then so has Brazil, and so has Canada. For that matter, so has Russia and China and many of the other places. They cannot say it's because of our technological superiority, though we certainly are the most technologically advanced nation in the world. But in many areas, the Japanese, and some areas the English, some the Swiss, and some the Germans and other peoples, have certain technological advantages. Even the Russians do over us. No, I'm absolutely convinced we're the greatest land on this earth, because we are a land of salespeople. The free enterprise system is here. And basically the salesperson epitomizes the opportunity which free enterprise brings. And yet, despite this fact, there seem to be a lot of people in the world of selling who for whatever reason seem to be a little embarrassed to say they're salespeople, or they're proud to represent the company they represent. They're proud of the product they sell. But for whatever reason, they seem to be a little hesitant to say, I am a salesman, or I am a sales lady. We want to change that attitude, because your attitude will enable you to close the close ones, those that really are the cliffhangers and all of that kind of good stuff. So let's look at the sales process, and I want to do a sales job on you. I'm flat going to sell you, and why you ought to be so proud to be a salesperson. Let's take the word sell itself. It is better described by the Norwegian word Celia, pronounced or spelled rather S-E-L-J-E, and it literally means to serve, to sell. Ladies and gentlemen, is to serve America itself, as you probably know, was discovered by a salesman. Not by any stretch of imagination could you accuse Christopher Columbus of being a navigator. Now, if you will recall, that dude is looking for India. He missed it 12,000 miles now, from where I come from. That ain't navigation. And the interesting thing is, he went back home and said, hey, we found it. No, he absolutely was not a navigator. You might say, well, was he a salesman? Well, let me build a case for Chris in this particular case. First of all, he was an Italian in Spain. Now that is way out of his territory. He's speaking a foreign language. He only has one prospect to call on. And if he misses a sale, he has to swim home. Now you tell me, was he a salesman or not? He called on Isabella, and he told the story, and when he told the story, she did lack a lot of other prospects that Chris, sound like a good idea. But man, $112,000 for 5 little old ships. Price is too high. A lot of people don't realize they started out with 5, but 2 of them did go over the side now. when she brought up the price objection. Chris not only heard what she said, he understood what she was saying. She was saying now, "Look, Chris, 12,000 bucks, man. The price is too high. The benefits are too low." And so he started giving her the benefit about a short route to India, about all of the wealth, the undiscovered land. And since he was a Chrisan, I'm sure he sold the queen on the idea that she would have a chance to take the message to all of those ignorant savages along the way. Yes, he really did do a sales job. And as he made the presentation, she said, "Look, Chris, okay, the price is fair, but I just don't have any money." How many of you have ever heard that objection brought up? And so Chris looked at there and he said, "Look, is he now? Since I wasn't there, I'm not absolutely certain this is verbatim, but he says, 'You got that string of beads hanging around your neck. Let's take them down to the pawn shop, let's hack, and we'll finance this deal.'" Well, your history books will tell you that they literally had to borrow the money to finance the trip. And then Chris had to do a lot more selling. He had to sell the sailors on the idea of making a trip with him. And then once they got out there, every day they sailed, and you got to remember the ignorance and the fear and the doubt and the superstitions, which were so prevalent in those days. And so he had to overcome that. As a matter of fact, the further they went day after day, there was a mutiny threatened. They were going to throw Christopher Columbus overboard every day. He had to sell in order to sail. He had to say, "Fellas, let's just give it another day. Another call," is what he really was saying to us in those days, wasn't he? And then one morning, the glad sea cry came forth. Land who and the most profitable sales call in history came to a close. And at that particular moment, Christopher Columbus made the biggest mistake of his sales career. He did not service the account. He thought that since he opened the door, that he was going to get all of the benefits from opening that door, and he did not sell or service the account. And America's VPUs is under the picture, and we did not become the United States of Columbus. We became the United States of America. Now you see, ladies and gentlemen, this happens a lot of times in selling. We go make the sale, we don't service the account, and somebody else then ends up getting the business. We see that happening in marriage, don't we? Fellas, how we will make that fantastic sales presentation. We will court the girl, and girls, how you did a little courting yourself along the way. All of the promises you made back and forth to each other in order to make the sale. But then once the sale is made, a lot of times we do not keep on selling and servicing the account. And the net result is other men or other women enter the picture. You got to keep on selling. You see, when you make the sale, you got your foot literally in the front door. A lot of people understand that when you've made the sale, you are in the inviolable position of being in the driver's seat. But when you take your foot off the road or your eye off the road, that is the customer, and your foot off the gas pedal. And that is service that competition starts selling the idea that they are better drivers or that they have better gasoline which they can service you with. Yeah, you got to keep on selling. The truth of the matter is, America was populated by salesmen. Sir Walter Raleigh toured the coffee houses of London and sold those ignorant, fearful supers IOUs people on the idea of leaving the relative security of their homeland and coming into the uncharted wilderness. We were freed by a salesman, George Washington, probably one of the greatest salesmen who ever lived. And I want to tell you what his sales job was. He literally had to sell the farmers and the merchants and the backwoodsmen and the seamen on leaving what they were doing, coming and joining the army or the navy, going to war against the most powerful nation on the face of this earth, the biggest navy and the strongest army, and he had to sell him along the idea, let's go fight those people. But let me tell you in advance now, if we win, I'm not going to be able to pay you. And if we lose, they're going to string you to the highest tree. Now that's selling. Yeah, you folks who do any recruiting. How many of you are managers and have to hire sales? All right, can you imagine your results if you had to say to the salesman now, look, GNA send you on a sales call, odds are against you making a sales. If you do make the sale though, I'm not going to be able to pay you, and if you miss the sale, I'm GNA. Hang you. Now you tell me, how many sales do you think you're going to make? Now you got to understand too that the American colonists were deeply divided, only 1/3. actually wanted independence. One-third were still loyal to the king, and one-third said, look, George, don't worry about us. Whichever side wins, that's the one we're going to support. And you can absolutely count on us. George Washington had quite a job to do, and he did it when the war was over. Alexander Hamilton, his first Secretary of the Treasury, came to him and said, President Washington, let's get the Congress to appropriate some money so that we can study the methods which the British have used to establish their factories and quote agents around the world. And they appropriated the money, the study was done, and you got to understand that for the first 168 years of our existence in America, we had basically only reached the Appalachian Mountains. But then when they appropriated that money, appropriated the money for establishing trading posts and what have you, and the westward expansion started. And as they moved westward, they could buy the guns and the blankets and the supplies. And in just 30 years after we'd won our independence, Lewis and Clark had made it all the way to the West Coast. Because salespeople entered the picture, folks. I don't know how you feel about it, but I am proud and excited about being a salesman when I die. I'm having real difficulty. I hope that's not going to be right away. But when I die, I'm debating on my tombstone as to whether I want him simp to write Zig Ziglar salesman, or whether I want them to write Zig Ziglar. He wouldn't quit. I'm resting between which one of those I think I am the most proud of staying with it, are the fact that, yes, I am part of such a critically important profession. Then if it's so important and so magnificent, why do so many people not understand? Even as a matter of fact, have a tendency to put down the profession of selling. Well, I believe there are about 4 basic reasons. Number 1, it started with that old Yankee peddler image of using high-pressure tactics, of making people want something they did not really need, or making them buy something which they really did not want. That was one of the reasons. A second reason was because of this monstrosity that R. Miller wrote entitled Death of a Salesman. And not only was that a long run on Broadway depicting Willie Ellman as the typical American salesman a loser. In other words, to the nth degree, not only did they show it, in a Broadway run for a long time, but then they put it on television not once, not twice, but 3 times, which simply characterized a noble profession for something. It absolutely is not, and the effect was that of a negative one. Then the third reason a lot of people are not excited about the profession of selling is they have the misguided sense of what security is all about. A lot of people say, oh, well, I would want a secure job. They don't understand that security is in the ability to produce, and I'll get back to that in just a few minutes. But the major reason, ladies and gentlemen, why a lot of people really are not sold on the profession of selling is not anybody's fault but our own in the profession, and we must look at ourselves honestly and forthrightly and start doing our own homework and our own sales job. You see, we've learned how to sell our goods, our products, and our services, but we really haven't sold the profession of selling, and that's what I am about to do. Really get you excited about being a part of the profession I want to sell to you. The benefits of the profession itself. And the first thing I'm going to start with is security. How many of you remember way back why in 1981 and 2, they were having a so-called recession? Can I see your hands? Please hold them up real high. Okay, now, during those quote recession years, there were literally tens of thousands of honest, sincere, dedicated, conscientious, hardworking, productive people who lost their jobs. They came from every profession, literally. I mean, there were teachers and superintendents, there were airline pilots and airline steers, there were secretaries and janitors, there were truck drivers and miners, there were auto workers and electrical workers, there were steel producers and coal miners. Just about every industry lost their jobs, not because they were unwilling to work, not because they didn't want to work, not because they didn't have the talent to work, but simply because of the economy itself. And many of them, as I say, were honest and conscientious and dedicated and caring and hardworking. Now I'm going to give you a challenge. Name me just one honest, sincere, dedicated, productive, hardworking salesman or saleslady who lost their job back in 1981 or 2, and if they did, because the company went out of business, they simply could go down the street and get a job with someone else. About 10 years ago, when we're having another quote recession. I'll never forget this. I was doing a sales training seminar over in Atlanta, Georgia, just before I was to speak Two young men came up and wanted to know if they could get a refund on their tickets. And I said, well, why? And they said, well, we just got fired. We had a personality conflict with our boss. We have nothing to sell. So we certainly don't need to know more about selling. Well, let me stress the point. Number one, I had nothing to do with the sale of the tickets. All I did was fill the speaking engagement for them. But I looked at these two young guys and I said, well, let me ask you a question. Do you like to sell? They said, we love it. I said, do you want to continue in selling? They said, of course we do. I said, well, let me ask you if I can get you a dozen interviews before the night is over so that you can take your pick and choice of a good sales job. Would you like that? They said, man, yeah. I said, come on in. You got the interviews when we got to that point where I asked you the same question. I did a moment ago ask that audience the same question. I asked a moment ago, how many of you ever hire salespeople? Then I'm going to ask you again, how many of you in this live audience ever hire salespeople? Can I see your hands? Now we're in 1983. Some people say the recession is still not over. I say that a recession is something you either join or don't join. I just decided not to join it. And for that reason, our company has been, exceptionally productive during this period of time. But how many of you sales managers right here today would have an opening at this precise moment, recession or not, for an honest, sincere, dedicated, conscientious, hardworking, productive salesperson? Can I see your hands? Those two young men left that night each with over a dozen interviews for jobs. You see, the nice thing about selling is the security of it. Everybody works on a commission. My secretary, the president of our company, the president of the United States, the truck driver. Anybody works on a commission. Even if they have a salary, they're on a commission because the salary is dependent upon productivity. And if they do not produce, then it's just a question of time before the job itself is gone. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the fact why you can even get to be the president of the United States. And if you don't produce like you ought to, they'll get you. How many of you had already heard of that particular story? Okay, now the question comes up. All right, Z secure. But is it realistic to say that in the world of selling, you really are secure? Well, let me ask the question. How many of you in this audience today, live audience, and in the seminar audience viewing the film, how many of you have been in the world of selling for as long as 3 years? Can I see your hands? How many of you made more money in 1981 than you did in 1980? Would you hold up your hand? How many have you made more in 82 than you made in 81? How many have you made more in 1983? Are going to make more in 83 than you did in 82? Can now. What's this bit about recession? What's this bit about security? You see, the truth of the matter is that you have so much control over your income in this world of selling. Let me give you a couple of examples. In 1982, I spoke down in Victoria, Texas. I met an outstanding insurance. I was down there rather for an outstanding insurance man named Calvin Hunt. Formerly played offensive line for the Houston ERS. Once a year, he brings in a speaker for the benefit of the community. Cian is an enormously successful life insurance man. He sells polys where the premiums run way over $100,000 a year, has a chauffeur-driven limousine, and his chauffeur drives him around while he's doing all of the figuring and preparing for his presentations. And Calvin said to me, you know, Z, it's true that our industry is down just about 10%. He said what that means is that 50% of the guys and grow a little discouraged, and so they don't work as hard now with 50% of them out of competition business down. Only 10%, that's got to mean my business is going to double. Guess what it did? Doubled. That's right, you see your business is not out there, it's here. But in other industries, if you're a welder or a truck driver or other things, you really cannot say that no, you've got the security of being able to get out and go get so much of what you do. You can create businesses. A salesperson. I was out in Prescott, Arizona very recently. I met a man. I was working again with my good friend Ted Lamb, who's the Collet dealer in 1982, known as the worst year in the history of the automobile industry. Ted Lamb's business as a Chevrolet dealership was up 68% dollar-wise over what it was the year before. He sold 69% more units. And he had the most profitable year in the history of the automobile business for him. And his dad both have been in for many, many years. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a secure profession for the simple reason that you can control so much of your business. The truth of the matter is, selling is a democracy. That's one of the reasons that I am so excited about being a salesperson. You see, my company and yours really does not care whether you're black or white, tall or short, fat or slim, male or female, extrovert or introvert. They don't in many cases even care about your education, though. In some technological fields that would not be true. But by and large, the only two things they are really concerned about is your productivity and your integrity. And if you've got those two things going, then you write your own ticket about where you're going and what you're going to be doing with it. I love the profession of selling for that reason, because it is a profession which is a democracy. I love the profession of selling because we who sell are in an opportunity to help so many people, do so many things. Some of you sell products which save lives, never will. I forget a young man who sold smoke and fire detectors, who the week after he had sold and installed in one home, it literally saved the lives of an entire family. Think of the enormous feeling he got as a direct result of that. I love to talk to salespeople who sell products, who raise standards of living, who make the people more secure, never will. I forget one day I was, actually it was back in Prescott, Arizona, and a lady came to me and, "Saidi, want you to autograph this copy of See You at the Top." She said, "I want you to put it to my son's name." And I wrote her son's name in. She said, "Now you get a chance to meet him tonight and he'll be walking, thanks to this book. Right here." He was seriously injured in an airplane accident, and because of that injury he was unable to walk. And the doctors would not even treat him with the idea of him being able to walk. They simply were going to teach him how to survive in a wheelchair. And he had just about given up, and a new thought, a new concept, a new idea came along about, yes, we can do a lot of things with our life. How do you think it makes me feel with a situation like that? How do you feel when you sell a product and somebody says, "Man, you sure saved me a lot of money. You sure made my work easier. This helped me to get along better with my mate. This enabled me to realize some of my objectives in life." You see, we can directly benefit people every day. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that is a significant benefit in being a professional salesperson. One of the nice things about the world of selling is that you can wake up in the morning and you can get up in front of the mirror and you can look yourself in the eye and you realize, you see as you say to yourself, "Man, you're such a nice guy," or "You're such a nice girl. You deserve a raise." And you got to understand that you're the chairman of the board, you're the president at the secretary treasury, and yes, you are also the janitor. And when you look yourself in the eye and say, "You deserve a raise," the board just met, and the raise is yours. As my friend Cal Robert W. say, the raise becomes effective just as soon as you do. I get so amused. Every presidential election, we have the Democrats over here and the Republicans over here, and the two candidates get at each other, and